Hello everyone, this is the 5th Epical Revelation Fellowship. I'm Reverend Dr. Roger Paul. I'm here with my wife, Reverend Diane Paul, and our group. And tonight we're continuing our study of paper 66, and we're in section 5 of the Urantia book. It's the organization of the 100, and that starts on page 745 or 66 5.1. And guess we're ready to start. Let's say a little prayer and we'll get started. Father, thank you for bringing us together tonight. We pray that you'll open our hearts and our minds, that we might remember some of this stuff we study and share it with others. We thank you for the opportunity to serve you and to do your will. We thank you and we give you the praise in your Son's name, Michael, Jesus, and Amen. Amen. I think I'll start out reading tonight for a change.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Organization of the 100. The 100 were organized for service in 10 autonomous councils of 10 members each. When 2 or more of these 10 councils met in joint session, such liaison gatherings were presided over by Delegastia. These 10 groups were constituted as follows. Now, Delegastia was Caligas's second in command. He was Lananondek's son also, right? So, the way this organization of the 100 was broken down is they had 10 separate groups, and each of those 10 separate groups had 10 members. Okay, and there was a person in charge of each one of those 10 separate groups. And when 2 or more of these groups met in councils together, then the Lananondek son, or Dalagasta, presided over them, and that's basically what this is saying here.
So basically, Roger, the 100 went into 10 separate groups.
Right.
That's 10 people apiece.
Or 10 people apiece. That's correct. Okay. Tim, would you take the next one, please?
1. The Council on Food and Material Welfare. This group was presided over by food, water, clothes, and the material advancement of the human species was fostered by this able corps. They taught well digging, spring control, and irrigation. They taught those from the higher altitudes in the north improved methods of treating skins for use as clothing, and weaving was later introduced by the teachers of art and science.
So remember, these 10 groups took on different aspects of human life and tried to help them improve and through revelation. And I'm getting one of these Norton Live update things.
So the first 10 basically taught us food and material welfare.
That's right. How to make clothes out of skins and things like that. Weaving later on. How to...
Using the hides of animals, the skins of animals, correct?
That's correct. How to preserve food by smoking and drying and that sort of thing to make food last longer. So that, because there was no refrigeration, remember, back then. So, okay. I think the clicker's gone dead on me. The battery kept giving me a message. Hey.
It's fine.
Is he behaving? Or?
Yeah, that's fine.
All right. And this is the Council on Food and Material Welfare, and Ang was in charge of that. It looks like they had 10 men and 10 women. All right. Millie, would you take the next one, please?
Yes. Great advances were made in methods of food storage. Food was preserved by cooking, drying, and smoking. It thus became the earliest prosperity.
Property. Earliest property, Millie.
The earliest property.
Right.
Man was taught to provide for the hazards of famine, which periodically decimated the world.
Okay, so they taught them how to store and preserve food for those times when food was scarce, right? All right.
2, the Board of Animal Domestication and Utilization. This council was dedicated to the task of selecting and breeding those animals best adapted to help human beings in bearing burdens and transporting themselves, to supply food and later on to be of service in the cultivation of the soil. The Able Corps was directed by Bond.
All right, this is before the use of horses. That's my little cat correction too. And this is the Board of Animal Domestication and Utilization. Several types of useful animals now extinct were tamed, together with some that have continued as domesticated animals to the present day. Man had long lived with the dog, and the blue man had already been successful in taming the elephant. The cow was so improved by careful breeding as it became a valuable source of food. Butter and cheese became common articles of human diet. Men were taught to use oxen for burden bearing, but the horse was not domesticated until a later date. The members of this corps first taught men to use the wheel for the facilitation of traction. So this is where the invention of the wheel came from. Okay, it was taught to them by the Caligastan 100. Right. Kim?
It was in these days that carrier pigeons were first used, being taken on long journeys for the purpose of sending messages or calls for help. Bond's group were successful in training the great doors
Fandors.
and passenger birds, but they became extinct more than 30,000 years ago.
Okay, so shortly after the end of Adam and Eve, the Fandors became extinct, right?
Rodney's online.
Okay, you want to add him here? You get it? You got it? She say add him to the group? No.
He's here.
Okay.
Hey, Rodney.
Hey guys.
Hey, Rodney.
Hey.
Millie, would you take the next one, please? Millie?
Turn the mic on.
All right.
The advisors regarding the conquest of predatory animals, number 3.
Oh, yes.
It was not enough that early man should try to domesticate certain animals, but he must also learn how to protect himself from destruction by the remainder of the hostile animal world. This group was captained by Dan.
Hey, Roger, I had a question.
Yes.
Do they have any fossils of these Fandors?
I don't know of any offhand. There may be one out there that I don't know about, though, Tim.
And in the location that we're talking about, where's the location at Mesopotamia?
This is the close to the Persian Gulf. This is the area we consider Iran and Iraq now.
I'll have to do some research on that, but yeah, I was wondering if they found any fossils.
I do not know about that. Of the Fandors, I really can't. If they did, they would just think they were a dinosaur bird, is what they would think, probably. Because they were just very huge birds. But since they only became extinct about 30,000 years ago, there's a good chance that there's probably bones of them buried somewhere, you know. So.
Okay, so as you know of the...
I don't personally know of a case where they've uncovered one, but that does not mean there's not been one uncovered, and they just don't know what it is.
Okay, thank you.
All right. The number 3 here. This was very important because They also had to teach the tribes how to protect themselves from the hostile animals. You know, it was not only the domestication of the animals, but they had to protect themselves. And that's one of the two reasons they built a 40-foot brick wall around Dalmatia. One is to keep the warring tribes out, and the other is to keep the hostile animals out. All right? And this is the advisor on predatory animals, and this is headed up by Dan. Okay.
Would it be okay to say the tribe of Dan?
No, it wasn't really a tribe. It was a 10-member council of Dan. It was 10 members of the Calagassa 100.
Because I think of the 12 tribes of Israel. That's what I'm thinking about.
Yeah, no. This has
Which
nothing.
which has nothing to do with it, Roger. But I mean,
Yeah.
that was my question.
Yeah, no. It's
So
not.
these are just councils, yeah.
Right. Rodney, would you like to take the next one?
All right. The purpose of an ancient city wall was to protect against ferocious beasts, as well as to prevent surprise attacks by hostile humans. Those living without the walls and in the forest were dependent on tree dwellings, stone huts, and the maintenance of light fires. It was therefore very natural that these teachers should devote much time to instructing their pupils in the improvement of human dwellings by employing improved techniques and by the use of traps. Great progress was made in animal subjugation.
Okay, so they had to.
That's cool.
Yeah, they were trying to teach them how to build structures and stuff to protect themselves better and to keep themselves dry in storms and things like that and the elements. So, it's a handy little thing to know.
Number 4.
The faculty, excuse me. Is my turn?
Yeah, it's your turn.
Okay. 4, the Faculty on Dissemination and Conservation of Knowledge. This group organized and directed the purely educational endeavors of those early ages. It was presided over by FAD. The educational methods of FAD consisted in supervision of employment accompanied by instruction in improved methods of labor. FAD formulated the first alphabet and introduced a writing system. This alphabet contained 25 characters. For writing material, these early peoples utilized tree barks, clay tablets, stone slabs, a form of parchment made of hammered hides, and a crude form of paper-like material made from wasp nests. The Dalmatian Library, destroyed soon after the Calagassa disaffection, comprised more than 2 million separate records and was known as the House of Fad.
So FAD created the first alphabet, and in English, you know, we got 26 characters. They had 25. So they're very close to probably to the type of thing we have today.
So pretty much the A, B, C.
Yeah, along that line. They wouldn't be the same characters, but that was basically what probably the English language was based on later. You know, passed down through the blue man and eventually the white man, right? Okay. Also, they had several ways of writing on different types of things, and it's interesting that they had a library, which they called the House of Fad, which had 2 million separate records. So they kept track of everything they taught them and everything. So when Calagassa rebelled, this was not only a great loss for the spiritual part of the world, but it was also a great loss of the knowledge of the world, because these records were destroyed when he disinfected. So, all right, and this is the FAD's dissemination of and conservation of knowledge group. 10 of those also. All right. Guess I'm next. The Blue Man was partial to alphabet writing and made the greatest progress along such line. Red men preferred pictorial writing, while the yellow race drifted into the use of symbols for words and ideas, much like those they now employ. But the alphabet and much more was subsequently lost to the world during the confusion attendant upon rebellion. The Kalagassian disinfection destroyed the hope of the world of a universal language, at least from untold ages. So they believe that eventually we will come up with a universal language that will be accepted. And it may end up being English, we don't know. It could be Chinese too, because there's so many Chinese. Of course, the Chinese now make it mandatory to teach all their children English, so it's kind of interesting. All right, Tim, would you take the next one, please?
5. The Commission of Industry and Trade. This council was employed in fostering industry within the tribes and in promoting trade between the various peace groups. Its leader was Nod. Every form of primitive manufacture was encouraged by this corps. They contributed directly to the elevation of standards of living by providing many new commodities to attract the fancy of primitive men. They greatly expanded the trade and the improved salt production by the council on science and art.
Okay, so they taught them how to use salt to savor their food, to save their food, that sort of thing. So these were the group under the leadership of Nod to help bring this forward. Now, Nod is also one of the Kalagassa 60 that defected, and Nod went off into the northern part of the country, and that's what ended up becoming the land of Nod. And he was one of the disaffection. We're going to study that next time. So I'm not going to get into it.
You know, the word salt, Roger, actually derives from the word salary.
Yeah.
Is what the Revelation tells us.
Yeah. That's because it was used so much for trade. Okay. Millie, I believe you're next.
It was among these enlightened groups educated in the Dalmatia schools that the first commercial credit was practiced. From a central exchange of credits, they secured tokens which were accepted in lieu of the actual objects of barter. The world did not improve upon these business methods for hundreds of thousands of years.
Okay. So when you see that company commercial, go to it. You work it. All right. Let's go one more. Did I skip over one? Okay. I'm off on my thing here.
Rodney?
Yeah. Hang on just 1 second, y'all. Let me get back together with y'all here. Get the wrong button. Okay. Rodney?
It's just coming back on.
I believe Rodney went online because his thing is kind of
It's going
going up and down.
His line is going up and down as the picture.
He could be getting an upgrade.
Rodney, you out there? Go on, dear. Take this one.
Okay. 6. The College of Revealed Religion. This body was slow in functioning. Urantia civilization was literally forged out between the anvil of necessity and the hammers of fear. But this group had made considerable progress in their attempt to substitute creator fear for creature fear, ghost worship, before their labors were interrupted by the later confusion attendant upon the succession upheaval. The head of this council was Hap.
Okay, and Hap tried to teach the natives basically not to fear God, but to worship God. Okay, and he tried to replace that creator fear for what they call creature fear or ghost worship. Tried to explain to them that there were spirits that they could not see, that sort of thing. And this went on until basically the rebellion. And that fear, literally, of ghosts and stuff was increased by what happened by the Kalagassa 100 later. But this is the College of the Revealed Religion. and it was led by Hap. And this was not haphazardly.
Joke.
All right. None of the prince's staff would present revelation to complicate evolution. They presented revelation only as the climax of their exhaustion of the forces of evolution. But Hap did yield to the desire of the inhabitants of the city for the establishment of a form of religious service. His group provided the Dalmatians with the 7 chants of worship and also gave them the daily praise phrase, and eventually taught them the Father's prayer, which was, before I go on to the prayer, it's important what they say here is they did not teach them revelation to complicate evolution. In other words, they didn't over-reveal to them information that their primitive minds could not handle, right? So they taught them very, very small steps, very, very little stuff, and they did not basically cut off the ideas of the normal evolution of the planet, right?
Hey Roger, before you say the prayer, when it says whose son, are they referring to the eternal Son and not Michael and Abaddon?
Okay, let's see here.
Because it says Father of all whose Son we honor.
Yes, we're talking about the Creator Son, right?
They're talking about the eternal Son, correct?
No, they're talking about the Creator Son there.
Okay, right, the Creator Son.
Yeah. All right. I do believe. Hang on. No, they could be talking about the eternal Son there.
Okay, they could be talking about the eternal Son because this is way before Michael and Abaddon.
This prayer seemed too advanced for that period of time to me.
Yeah, it could be either one, because when you talk about the Creator Son, you're talking about direct line with the eternal Son. So,
but I always like to say, whoever has seen the Son, basically Michael, has seen also the eternal Son and the Father.
Right, and the Father. That's correct. So you could interpret it either way, really. But I would not say for sure that that's who he's talking about. He could be talking about the eternal Son, depending on what he's teaching them at the time. If they're teaching them that they were created by a Son of God, which is the Son of the Son of God, right? Then they would be talking about the Creator Son. If not, it would be the eternal Son. So it really could be interpreted either way.
Hey Roger, Rodney was online for a minute ago.
Oh, he is. Thank you, Tim.
You're welcome.
You want to take the next paragraph, Tim?
Yes. The prayer.
Yes.
Father of all whose Son we honor, look down upon us with favor. Deliver us from the fear of all save you. Make us a pleasure to our divine teachers, and forever put trust on our lips.
True.
Deliver us from violence and anger. Give us respect for our elders and that which belongs to our neighbors. Give us this season green pastures and fruitful flocks to gladden our hearts. We pray for the hastening of the coming of the promised uplifter, and we would do your will on this world as others do on worlds beyond.
Several things about this paragraph of this prayer I want to point out. Okay, first they talk about in the first line deity, right? Father and Son, and then they go on to tell us about fear from all save you. In other words, there's nothing in the universe that we should fear outside of God, right? And really, we should not fear God. We should love God rather than fear Him, right? So there's really nothing to be afraid of. And then it goes on to tell us to make us a pleasure of our divine teachers and put truth on our lips. So what they're doing is they're reinforcing the teaching that they're doing to these primitives and gives them something to try to always tell the truth and always do what their teachers tell them. Okay? And then it goes on, it teaches them in the next sentence. It teaches them to try to stay away from violence, respect older people, and don't steal anything from their neighbors, right? Does this sound familiar? The Ten Commandments, right? And then it goes on to talk about green pastures and fruitful flocks. Provide us for our daily sustenance, in other words. So they try to cover everything in this prayer. And then they go on to say, pray for the hastened coming of the promised uplifter. And who would be this promised uplifter? This would be a son of God, right? At this point, they would not be talking about the coming of the Holy Spirit because the Son has not come yet, right? So this promised uplifter would be a son of God to uplift them, right? All right.
So a son of God, could that fall in the category of creator sons or just Michael and Abaddon?
No, any of the three paradise sons.
That's correct. The Abanos, the Danos, and the creator sons.
That's correct. Could have been any of those three, right? All right, because we could have gotten one of those other than Michael, on our planet. He just chose this planet to. We were just fortunate. Were you able to get Rodney back?
It keeps on going off. It keeps on dropping.
Okay. Melly, would you take the next one, please?
Could the promised uplifter not be Adam?
No, I don't believe that they would be talking about Adam as an uplifter, but it could be, Melly, but I don't believe that would be the case. I think that would, you may be right, though. It could be Adam. It could very well be Adam because he's a material son, and that's part of the descending sons. So yeah, you could be right.
Okay. Although the prince's staff were limited to natural means and ordinary methods of race improvement, they held out the promise of the Adamic gift of a new race as the goal of subsequent evolutionary growth upon the attainment of the height of biologic development.
So they were informing them of the coming of Adam in the future. Of course, this was a period of 350,000 years before Adam showed up, right? From the time they got there. So this would be teaching this for a lot of years before he actually came. All right?
I just had belly up. I can't even see Tim.
No?
I'm still here. Can you guys hear me?
You are, but I can't see your picture.
Oh, that's weird.
We've never had his picture, it's only circles.
Well, his circle. Oh, that's his circle over there. Sorry, Tim.
That's okay. Thank you. I'm glad to be here tonight.
Those are my tricks.
Yeah.
7. The guardians of health and life. This council was concerned with the introduction of sanitation and the promotion of primitive hygiene and was led by Lut.
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 And this is the counselor, the Lutz Council on Health and Life. Now keep in mind, these are primitive men, right? That means they didn't take baths. They're pretty smelly all the time. They believed that taking a bath would give them diseases, right? So they had to teach them to some basic hygiene, all right?
I thought that's how baptism was invented.
It really was, in a sense. They gave them the weekly bath as a religious ceremony, okay? Its members taught much of that which was lost during the confusion of subsequent ages, but never to be rediscovered until the 20th century. They taught mankind that cooking, boiling, and roasting was a means of avoiding sickness, also that such cooking greatly reduced infant mortality and facilitated early weaning. It's interesting that they taught us cooking, and yet everybody keeps pushing us to eat raw vegetables, isn't it? And that's kind of strange. All right. Tim, I believe you're up next.
Many of the early teachings of lost guardians of health persisted among the tribes of Earth on down to the days of Moses, even though they became much garbled and were greatly changed.
All right, so some of these lasted for a while. Millie, would you take the next one, please?
The great obstacle in the way of promoting hygiene among these ignorant peoples consisted in the fact Yet the real causes of many diseases were too small to be seen by the naked eye, and also because they all held fire in superstitious regard. It required thousands of years to persuade them to burn refuse. In the meantime, they were urged to bury their decaying rubbish. The great sanitary advance of this effort came from the dissemination of knowledge regarding the health-giving and disease-destroying properties of sunlight.
Yeah, by putting stuff in sunlight, it destroys many of the bacteria and stuff.
Hey Roger, what does that mean when they say that it required thousands of years to persuade them to burn refuse? What's refuse?
Refuse,
Garbage.
any garbage just left over. You know, when you eat, you have.
It was good that they were burying it. I just recently had an article sent to me from a friend in the garden club about instant composting. You just go out to the garden, dig a hole, dump tonight's garbage in there, and cover it up.
Yeah.
And within a week or 10 days, it's gone.
Yeah,
So they were composting.
that's right.
Okay, thank you, Millie.
All right. Rodney, you back with us?
I'm back.
Okay, could you take the next one?
My thought.
Like your attitude.
It's good to have you back, Rodney. I'm glad you're back online.
We had a new security system and internet system put in, and that's why I was late. He was just leaving. And I went on for it. So. Gotta work the bugs out. All right. Before, is that where we are? Yep.
Yes.
Before the prince's arrival, bathing had been an exclusively religious ceremonial. It was indeed difficult to persuade primitive men to wash their bodies as a health practice. Lot finally induced the religious teachers to include cleansing with water as part of the purification ceremonies, to be practiced in connection with the noontime devotions once a week in the worship of the Father of all.
So they got their weekly bath by being cleansed with water. Didn't think anything about soap.
Snuck it in there.
Yeah. All right. You know, it's really funny that even through the last 100 years, there are many people that still only take a bath once a week, and many of the mountain people believe you would get sick if you took baths more than once a week. So.
Yeah, I know a few people I'd love to baptize.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's common to take a bath on Saturday night,
Yeah.
get ready for Sunday morning, go to church.
When I was a child, I remember that's when we took a bath was Saturday night, once a week.
We washed up during the week, but
Yeah,
took
but
a bath.
took a
Yeah,
bath.
I have to say, 'cause it's freezing.
Yeah. Yeah.
These guardians of health also sought to introduce handshaking in substitution for saliva exchange or blood drinking as a seal of personal friendship and as a token of group loyalty. But when out from under the compelling pressure of the teachings of their superior leaders, these primitive peoples were not slow in reverting to their former health-destroying and disease-breeding practices of ignorance and superstition.
So what are they talking about here? When people would become friends, they'd be either exchange saliva, kissing, you know, French kissing,
Oh.
or drink each other's blood. So, of course, that's a great way to spread disease too, right?
Let's get some garlic for Diane.
So gross.
Dear, I think you're up.
I think it just
Oh, you just, I'm sorry.
I just
Sorry.
gagged.
8. The Planetary Council on Art and Science. This corps did much to improve the industrial technique of early man and to elevate his concepts of beauty. The leader was Mech. That's pretty self-explanatory. Art and Science. All right. Tim, I believe you're up next.
Art and science were at a low ebb throughout the world, but the rudiments of physics and chemistry were taught the Dalmatians. Pottery was advanced, decorative arts were all improved, and the ideals of human beauty were greatly enhanced. But music made little progress until after the arrival of the violet race.
And these are things that they taught them: pottery, art, drawing pictures, things like that. So,
When they speak about the violent race, we're talking about Adam and Eve's
We're
descendants?
talking about Adam and Eve's descendants and the people that they intermarried with,
Okay,
right?
thank you.
Millie.
These primitive men would not consent to experiment with steam power, notwithstanding the repeated urgings of their teachers. Never could they overcome the great fear of the explosive power of confined steam. They were, however, finally persuaded to work with metals and fire, although a piece of red-hot metal was a terrorizing object to early man. It would be terrorizing to me today.
Well, it's superstitions, right? They figured that they were possessed. And that's
Sort of like the red flower, huh, Roger?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah,
From the Jungle Book.
that was cool. I saw that last night.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
Rodney, would you take the next one?
Was it Matt? Is that how you pronounce
Yeah,
it?
Beck.
Matt did a great deal to advance the culture of the Andonites and to improve the art of the Blue Man. A blend of the Blue Man with the Andon stock produced an artistically gifted type, and many of them became master sculptures. They did not work in stone or marble, but their works of clay, hardened by baking, adorned the gardens of Dalmatia.
How about that?
And you know, we were talking last week about the bricks that were used to construct the wall.
Right.
So right here it's telling us they did have ovens for baking.
That's right. That's probably how they
baking the clay.
bake their brick. You know.
Make brick.
It's
yeah.
interesting, when me and Diane went to Montana, in Helena, they have a little tour you can take on a little like train, cart or train, whatever you want to call it. And they go by this area where they had these huge brick oven baking things. And it was left over from the gold rush time. They would actually use these things to make massive amounts of bricks for the buildings and things like that. So, kinda
Yeah, kilns.
kilns.
Hey,
Yeah.
Roger, I had a question.
Yeah.
They mentioned here, I blended the Blue Man with the Andon stock, which the Andon stock would be the descendants of Andon.
Right.
And so you had the 6 color races at the time of this happening, correct? And then they
Right.
just blended them? I mean,
Yeah. The blue.
was the Blue Man present with it?
Yeah.
Or is
the-
this just like a chemical,
yeah,
or is it these actually people that are... I don't understand what they're talking about here. A blend
Well,
of Blue
the-
Man with Andon stock
The
produced.
Sandgate people were all the colored races. Okay, so basically the children of the colored races, the blue group, basically mixed with some of the earlier races, and that would be the Andon stock. Okay, so they mixed with those that were there before the flourishing of the 6 colored races. So that's what they're talking about.
So they pretty much made it? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, they mated with earlier people, basically.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh. Sweet.
Great progress was made in the home arts, most of which were lost in the long and dark ages of rebellion, never to be rediscovered until modern times.
It's amazing. If we would have had that 200,000 years of progress that could have happened between when Caligastor rebelled up till now, who knows what kind of things we would have had today, right?
So another way of putting it, Roger, is just to say that it's a step up for that series of man, the Blue Man.
That's right. That's
That's
exactly.
correct. Okay, thank you.
9, the governors of advanced tribal relations. This was a group entrusted with the work of bringing human society up to the level of statehood. Their chief was Tut. It was not the same as King Tut in Egypt, the Pharaoh of Egypt. He was probably named after the legends of Tut. Okay, and here's the governors of advanced tribal relations. And Tut was one of the rebellious ones too. Who's up? Me? These leaders contributed much to the bringing about intertribal marriages. They fostered courtship and marriage after due deliberation and full opportunity to become acquainted. The purely military war dances were refined and made to serve valuable social ends. Many competitive games were introduced, but these ancient folk were a serious people. Little humor graced these early tribes. Few of these practices survived the subsequent disintegration of planetary insurrection. So basically they took some of the war dances and stuff and incorporated them into the marriage ceremonies and stuff. And this is the military war dance. See a lady dancing around there. Okay. Tim, I believe you're up.
Tut and his associates labored to promote group associations of a peaceful nature, to regulate and humanize warfare, to coordinate inter-tribal relations, and to improve tribal governments. In the vicinity of Dalmatia, there developed a more advanced culture, and these improved social relations were very helpful in influencing more remote tribes. But the pattern of civilization prevailing at the prince's headquarters was quite different from the barbaric society evolving elsewhere. Just as the 20th century society of Cape Town, South Africa, is totally unlike crude culture of the diminutive Bushmen up to the north.
Okay, so basically inside Dalmatia it was becoming very civilized, and outside Dalmatia it was not, right? They're still pretty barbaric, any way you look at it. Millie, would you take the next one?
Yes. 10. The Supreme Court of Tribal Coordination and Racial Cooperation. This Supreme Council was directed by Van and was the Court of Appeals for all other 9 special commissions charged with the supervision of human affairs. This council was one of wide function, being entrusted with all manner of earthly concerns which were not specifically assigned to the other groups. This selected corps had been approved by the Constellation Fathers of Urantia before they were authorized to assume the function of the Supreme Court of Urantia.
Very, very important. Van is the one that stood up to Caligastia when Caligastia, or Dalagastia, actually announced that Caligastia was rebelling. Okay? And Van made a 7-hour presentation why what they were fixing to do would be considered rebellion. And it was Van that sent a request to the system sovereign, which at that time was Lucifer, right? And Lucifer gave a report back to him that he should treat Caligastia as god of Urantia. So that's when Van appealed to the Constellation Fathers on Urantia, and that was when everything was cut off. We were cut off from as a rebellious planet, and so all the systems basically they couldn't communicate out. And Van's request was stuck because our communication was cut off from the Constellation Fathers and we're going to get into this on the next paper, but for 7 years he didn't know what the response would be. But he refused to follow them into rebellion along with 40 other of the Caligastia 100. So it's Van that took up the lead after Caligastia rebelled. And Van stayed faithful all the way up to the time of Adam and Eve. And he had a human associate named Amadon that stuck right there with him. So we're going to learn more about this. But they were in charge of the Supreme Court of Tribal Coordination and Racial Cooperation, and they're also the head of all the other councils. Okay.
So hey Roger, the Supreme Court was the group that Van and them were, the 10.
Yeah, Van and the 10 were considered the Supreme Court of Urantia out of the 100, and he took leadership when Caligastia rebelled. And Van took the loyal Caligastia, or loyal the Caligastia 100, and left Dalmatia and went north. And when they did that, they took the tree of life with them. And that's how Van and Amidon stayed alive for hundreds of thousands of years, you know, up to the time of Adam and Eve. And they did not leave until Adam and Eve's time. So they both stayed loyal all that time. One from Jerusalem of the Caligastia 100, and one human, okay, which was Amidon. So, and when anybody would communicate about what was happening on Urantia, the question was always, is Amidon still faithful? And Van still faithful? So, after all those years.
Yeah, when they said, what of Amidon and Van?
Right.
Do they still remain faithful?
That's right.
Isn't that amazing how the entire local universe can just focus on those two individuals?
Yeah, see, that was the system broadcast from Jerusalem, so it's interesting. Okay, let's go on. Who's up? Who just read?
I just read.
Okay, Millie, would you take the next one, the Princess Running? Millie? Your mic on? You, Millie. Seem to have lost Millie.
Rodney.
Rodney, would you like to take the next one?
I sure would.
Use Rodney too?
I'm sorry.
Huh?
We may have just lost Rodney too.
Oh, he did, John? Yeah.
We lose Millie?
Yeah, it says hold on while we try to get, here he is. His lines are going up and down.
Are you guys experiencing any rain down there? I know I am.
No, it's clear
Yeah,
as a
I
bell
think
here.
it's Rodney's connection.
Dear, would you go ahead and take number 6?
Yeah.
Well, I'll take number 6. The Prince's Reign. The degree of a world's culture is measured by the social heritage of its native beings, and the rate of cultural expansion is wholly determined by the ability of its inhabitants to comprehend new and advanced ideas. All right. Tim, would you take the next one?
Slavery to tradition produces stability and cooperation by sentimentally linking the past with the present, but it likewise stifles initiative and enslaves the creative powers of the personality. The whole world was caught in the stalemate of tradition-bound wars when the Caligastia 100 arrived and began the proclamation of the new gospel of individual initiative within the social groups of that day. But this benefit rule was so soon interrupted that the races never have been wholly liberated from the slavery of custom. Fashion still unduly dominates Urantia.
In other words, we're so concerned with what our neighbors think of us that we do not, our personalities are not allowed to creatively create new concepts, new ideas, and evolve. Okay? And this proclamation of this Caligastia 100, you know, proclamation of liberty, really just almost destroyed the planet. Is Millie back? Here?
Actually, it looks like she's disconnected. Millie, are you there?
Do I need to come over there and read that all over again? Y'all excuse me at home, let me
We have to read.
redial everybody.
Everybody.
In the group here. We've lost it.
Rodney's having a really hard time. There's no coming back.
Millie, are you out there? No, we lost everybody. Rodney's not even online. Hi, Tim.
Did we get Millie and Rodney back online?
No, I'm just trying to do that just now. We've got all sorts of windows open here.
Yeah, I see Millie's
Yeah, it's dialing.
thing going up and dialing.
But Rodney's not online, so
He's just going in and out.
would you just add him if he comes
I
back?
will. That's what I've
Let
been
it,
doing.
let it, let it keep going.
Rodney's online now.
Oh, is it? Okay,
Hey, Rodney, good to have you back.
let me know.
Yeah,
if
Millie.
everything's finished. She's not on yet.
No, she's not.
Still dialing.
Yeah, they're both not on yet. They're still dialing.
Yeah, since Microsoft took over Skype, it's not very good anymore.
Well, some days it works really well. Today is just.
Rarely. Yeah. Too bad they messed up a good thing. Okay, who's on that I can
Me,
read?
I'm here.
Huh?
I just read.
Okay, sweetie, would you?
Okay.
The Calagas 100.
The Caligastia 100 graduates of the Satania Mansion worlds well knew the arts and culture of Jerusalem, but such knowledge is nearly valueless on a barbaric planet populated by primitive humans. These wise beings knew better than to undertake the sudden transformation or the en masse uplifting of the primitive races of that day. They well understood the slow evolution of the human species, and they wisely refrained from any radical attempts at modifying man's mode of life on Earth.
So they didn't do great revelation or anything like that. They didn't want to mess up the normal evolution of the planet when it first started. Okay. Each of the 10 planetary commissions set about slowly and naturally to advance the interests entrusted to them. Their plan consisted in attracting the best minds of the surrounding tribes, and after training them, sending them back to the people as emissaries of social uplift. So they would train the locals that they had there, and then they would go back and train people in their tribes. All right? Tim, would you take the next one?
Foreign emissaries were never sent to a race except upon a specific request of that people. Those who labored for the uplift and advancement of a given tribe or race were always natives of that tribe or race. The 100 would not attempt to impose the habits and mores of even a superior race upon another tribe. Always they patiently worked to uplift and advance the time-tried mores of each race. The simple folk of Urantia brought their social customs of Dalmatia not to exchange them for new and better practices, but to have them uplifted by contact with a higher culture and by association, superior minds. The process was slow but very
Effectual.
effectual.
Okay, so they wanted to bring these people along slowly and let natural evolution take place, right? So they didn't do anything too quickly. Took much time. Is Millie back out there? Is Rodney back out there?
Oh wait, Millie's.
Yeah. Millie, are you there?
Hold on, 1 second. Here you
Millie, are you
Millie.
there?
go. Millie?
It's actually dialing.
Rodney, are you there?
No.
I don't see Rodney at all.
He's not online.
Dear, would you take the next one, please?
The Dalmatia teachers sought to add conscious social selection to the purely natural selection of biologic evolution. They did not derange human society, but they did markedly accelerate its normal and natural evolution. Their motive was progression by evolution and not revolution by revelation. The human race had spent ages in acquiring the little religion and morals it had, and these supermen knew better than to rob mankind of these few advances by the confusion and dismay which always result when enlightened and superior beings undertake to uplift the backward races by overteaching and over-enlightenment.
Okay, so they stressed the fact that they wanted to let things go along with the normal biologic evolution of the planet, right? And they didn't want to upset the little religion and morals that they had developed along this long period of time. So they brought them along very slowly and was very careful not to over-enlighten them. All right?
Hi, Millie.
Hello, I'm here.
It's great to have you back.
When Christian missionaries go into the heart of Africa, where sons and daughters are supposed to remain under the control of the direction of their parents throughout the lifetime of the parents, they only bring about confusion and the breakdown of all authority when they seek in a single generation to supplant this practice by teaching that these children should be free from all parental restraint after they have attained the age of 21. So even when the Christians go out to Africa, when they were doing this, and tried to get the sons and daughters to remain under the control of the parents, this basically